the founder should truly be running their social media brand for the first 6 months.
Hmm.
This is not something I would outsource to a branding agency. I wouldn't outsource it to anybody but yourself because your brand doesn't have a voice yet. And in the beginning, the brand is you. You know what the vision is of the company. You know what the voice is. You know whether you want to be snarky as a SaaS provider or whether you want to be serious as a consumer provider, right? Like you know what you want it to be. And you also want to be able to experiment really rapidly, like spend literally 15 to 20 minutes a day. That's all. And I want you to do it on your own.
Welcome to Taste and Tactics, where founders and go-to-market leaders share how they brought their boldest ideas to life. From concept to execution, we cover every step behind these iconic launches. Join me each week for both inspiration and actionable tips. I'm Shriya Nevatia. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. I'm so excited to have Snigdha here. We have been friends for years, started off on Twitter, and before that I was a fangirl of her as a young South Asian founder of a super cool startup that got into YC. I was like, oh, amazing story. I want to be friends with this person. So I'm so excited for you to be here and tell us more. So first, let's start with a little overview of you and your company, The Juggernaut.
My name is Snigdha. I'm the founder of The Juggernaut. And what we do is we're a community, a platform, a media empire, a juggernaut of sorts. Our mission is to diversify storytelling and, tell the South Asian stories you need to know. And we usually use the word you because we're a big tent out here. We have followers ranging from, non-South Asian politicians to other people, to Patti Smith, rock legends like Patti Smith.
That's
So
awesome.
we are a gateway to what I call getting smart about South Asian news and culture. Regardless of your background, regardless of your interests, we want you addicted to understanding this community, understanding this culture, and understanding how to navigate all the conversations that increasingly happen about this culture in mainstream media.
That's amazing. What was the gap that you were trying to fill? I remember like when it first came on my radar, it was I knew it was very unique, and like the older generation who were direct immigrants versus mine who was like second gen were reading the Times of India still. Like they were connected back to like media that was from South Asia, rather
Yeah.
like the Juggernaut seems more diasporic.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on that already. I think I'm a power user. So I had grown up reading so much, watching so much Hindi cinema, watching so much Bengali cinema, reading everything from The Economist and the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times to, renting out those DVDs and those VHS tapes for the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And I always felt as if American media didn't get it right because they would do articles like meet Shah Rukh Khan. And I'm like, I already know who Shah Rukh Khan is. What do you mean meet Shah Rukh Khan? Like, we already know who he is. Or, you saw what happened with the Met Gala and the conversations
Yes.
they asked Shah Rukh. They're like, are you nervous? I'm like, do you know who you're talking to? This guy
Well,
is
because he's
absolutely not nervous.
yeah, like they
He's
didn't
for
know who he
breakfast.
was. They said like he said I'm a little nervous to be here, and then or like he said something because he didn't have a billion followers in the West like he did in Asia, and then of course they misunderstood that to think that he was green, and it's like this is the least green entertainer
Yeah, he's
ever.
like so
Yes.
seasoned. Anyway, so that happened. And then to your point, if you looked at media from India or from Pakistan or from Bangladesh, unfortunately, a lot of them also face a lot of press freedom issues or they are beholden to certain advertising revenue. So that often means that the product that they create isn't great either. It's often littered with ads. Those like, those when John Oliver makes fun of Indian news stations and there's like all these ads coming as people are talking and sometimes the reporting just isn't there. It's often just regurgitated. I remember waking up where I kind of broke that Taylor Swift's engagement ring is likely from India,
Mm,
the diamond, because I'd
yes.
done the research of what is an old mine cut, and I discovered that the old mine cut diamond can only come from India or Brazil, and likely India. I woke up to find out the Hindustan Times had taken my entire Instagram reel and written an article, and they're like, "Can we give you credit?" They asked me, but then they wrote it anyway,
Yeah.
and they didn't link to our Instagram reel or something like that. They embedded it, but they didn't link to it. They didn't
So it's
link
like
to
no,
the
you didn't.
Juggernaut.
You didn't give credit.
Yeah, so it was one of those moments where I'm like, okay, so this is what journalism is in India, which is like you take other people's work and you reformat it. We at the Juggernaut, like there's different types of reporting we do. We do original reporting, which is very deep. Whenever we do that, it's very original. We also do stuff like, which is aggregating news. That's when we kind of always credit the sources, like the AP reported this, CBS reported this, all these people did this. So the gap I was really solving was, how do I create a truly global platform and community that addresses kind of those global South Asian stories that often go ignored, right? Because or the stories that you should be knowing as a diaspora kid, or should be knowing maybe sitting in Bombay, but you don't know because sometimes your local media is too specific, or global Western mainstream media is too generic. So you kind of don't have any of that kind of what I call the brown space in between. And I'll give you a very specific example. Today's story, which is why I was running late for this podcast, is on grooming gangs in the UK. The entire Western narrative has been that these grooming gangs target, unfortunately, white girls, and then the groomers tend to be men of color. What we unearthed is that for decades, actually, there were grooming gangs targeting Sikh women, women who were Sikh, and nobody was reporting on this because people thought it was just like brown on brown crime, so we don't need to report on this, which is wild to me, right? It's been happening for decades. So like, how do we make sure we're telling these stories that other people aren't telling? Another example is we told the story of this man named Sani Baradia, who was a Gujarati American man who was convicted for a crime and a murder, even though he had never been to the city in which the murder had occurred. He was sitting in jail for 22 years, and because his community thought, oh, the US justice system must be right, he kind of felt lonely. He kind of felt alone. Nobody came out to support him, because this happened decades ago. This is when, even South Asian media wasn't really a thing. And when he was finally let out, there was like one article about him in like CBS that grouped him with other men that this one perpetrator had gotten into jail. Like, this one man has led all these men to end up in jail, but no one had done a deep dive on his story. And so we went, found him, thanks to another source of ours, Mahendra Patel, talked to Sani Baradia, got his story, talked to his lawyers, like spent over an hour with him on Zoom, spent over like 30 minutes with him with the lawyer. I personally went through all of his case files, and to the point where his own lawyer was like, wow, you caught some details that I had forgotten about. And I was like, I know, because it was like incredible. So I think that's the kind of work we do, which is we're taking and talking about things that might have been forgotten, might have not gotten the due from either Indian media, Pakistani media, Bangladeshi media, South Asian media, or Western mainstream media, because they don't have the expertise to do it either.
Yeah. It's such a amazing and unique niche. And before we get into a lot of the meat of what we're talking about today, which is your really unique social media strategy that kind of launched you into the space, I also want to ask, one thing that's different about you versus a lot of other media companies is that your background is like, you went through Y Combinator. Like, you have these really startup-y techie networks, like you raised venture capital, rather than being like just fully in the traditional journalism world, or like kind of bridging the two of them. And so how did that happen?
Yeah, I think my background, I think so much of it is like founder driven. So my background itself is much more business and tech. Like my first job out of college was at McKinsey, New York. And then if you can remember, I know I'm now dating myself, but when I left McKinsey, New York as a business analyst, it was the year 2014. And it was the year when that mobile shift was happening. So all of my BA friends were moving to SF, right? They were working at Stripe, they were working at Uber, they were working at DoorDash. It was like the wild, wild west when mobile consumer platforms were really winning. So that's what I was like subsumed and surrounded by. And I also got a job at a A16Z funded startup as their head of finance. This is a company called Twice. Noah, I don't know if you remember me. You interviewed me. He probably does remember me. And I almost went to SF, but then I really deeply thought about it, and it didn't feel like me. I've always been into math. I've always been into tech. I went to Stuyvesant High School, which, CS is a required program. Like my program beat everybody else in the prisoner's dilemma that I had to like build or whatever. And then I went off to Bombay instead, actually, and worked in Bollywood for a year and did some venture capital in India. And so that's the background I came with. So when I went to business school, my internship was also actually at a media investment firm. It was called Otter Media. It's now defunct. It was a JV between AT&T and the Chernin Group, and they notoriously invest in a lot of media tech companies. from like Full Screen to that anime startup, Crunchyroll.
Yeah.
And when I was there that summer, my boss, Sarah Hardin, invested in Reese Witherspoon, and I got to meet her a couple of times. Hello Sunshine. And that ended up selling for nearly $1 billion to Candle Media. So basically, my background was surrounded by like more of the business tech kind of consumer side of a lot of media companies. And so I had been thinking about like the idea for the Juggernaut for years. My first version was maybe I should do like a Netflix Bollywood thing because I was obsessed with Bollywood. And I even emailed Reed Hastings about it. And Reed responded and he said, "Oh, yeah, we're already on this." So I kind of thought he was on it. This was like 2016. I didn't realize it would take him many more years to get much better Bollywood library. So I could have maybe beat him. Reed, I don't know if you're listening to this, but I like
We'll
said,
tag them all. Everyone you're mentioning, we're going to tag them.
Enough right things that I didn't like pursue it. I got really, I got dissuaded. I was 24. So I like parked it. And then after Hello Sunshine, I met this amazing woman named Gitanjali Dhillon. I know her from very before. She had started kind of like the Netflix Bollywood thing before. And we started talking about different versions of what a community or a big media company for South Asians could look like. We ended up like, I think she ended up being like, I can't do a startup anymore. I have to like go help get my kid to college. And I was like, well, if that's the case, then I want to turn it into something a little bit different. So then we kind of like did different things. And I kind of ran with the thread that I wanted more of like a media consumer subscription community instead of more of like an entertainment lifestyle magazine. And I felt like that was too crowded and launched with that with a free newsletter. And Eric Glyman, who's the founder of Ramp, one of the co-founders of Ramp, he had gone through YC. This is why this is so important, who your network is. He had gone through YC very early for Paribus. And he saw me struggle because I was pitching people my early ideas of the Juggernaut in New York City. And all the investors in New York City said I was genuinely crazy. They said the South Asian market was too niche and nobody would fund me. And this was completely ridiculous. And also Indian people said this to me too. I have so many receipts of Indian uncles who literally told me that I would fail.
Of course.
They're like, there's already India Abroad. I'm like, nobody I know is reading India Abroad. Like
non-millennials for sure. Yeah.
Let's be real. I love them. They did such an incredible thing when there was nothing. They did a lot of great work. Without them, I wouldn't exist. But they would keep comparing me to India Abroad, say, well, no, India Abroad already exists. And I was like, I'm not building Indian Abroad, uncle. Like, I'm building my own thing. And Eric saw me struggle. And Eric was like, I need you to apply to Y Combinator. And I was, Eric, I'm never going to get it because I know how to code. I did a coding boot camp at Flatiron. And I did code since I was like, I don't know, 14, 15. But I didn't view myself as a coder, right? That's another thing. I didn't view myself as my primary identity. And I was a solo founder because I talked to over 40 journalists to start the Juggernaut, and they all said no to me. I don't know if any of them regret it, but they all said no to me as my co-founder. So I was like, okay, I'm alone. I'm a solo founder. And Eric was like, just apply. Then I go to the website and I'm like, Eric, the deadline is already passed. And Eric's like, apply anyway. So that guy, he made sure I applied. I showed him my application. He gave me edits. He did mock interviews with me. After I applied 5 days late, I got an interview. He also put in recommendations for me. I got an interview. I was in Spain at the time, so I got the last slot because I wasn't paying attention because I thought I wouldn't get an interview. So I flew from Spain to New York to SF to interview. Then I did one interview, a 10-minute interview, and they said maybe. So I call Eric as I'm waiting. I'm like, Eric, they said maybe. He's like, repeat exactly what happened in the interview. And I literally, because I have an elephantine memory, I told him exactly what happened. He's like, you did not come off aggressive and formidable enough. Here's what I want you to think about. Try to change your answers to be more formidable. Because when they said, oh, a media company is hard, I'm like, yeah, it's hard, but I can do it. He's like, that's a dumb answer. He's like, if someone says a media company is hard, be like, the Juggernaut has a TAM of trillions of dollars. You know what I mean? Like that is what you want to respond with. And so I went in for my second interview. I applied the Eric Glyman strategy and I got in later that night. And then I had to stay until Friday for their orientation, did that. And then I flew from SF to New York on Saturday. And then I ran the New York City Marathon on Sunday. So that was my YC story.
Absolutely amazing. I love this. I feel like, yeah, every YC story is tough because you're always like running around for literally a tiny 10-minute slot, but like this is extra awesome. You have all of these other little ups and downs in the process. Okay, so
basically be friends with good people, and those good people will tell you to apply to Y Combinator. So that's how
absolutely your network is your net worth. It's dumb, but it's true. Okay, so I want to dig in. The thing that we want to focus on today is talking about how you didn't focus on Twitter as your primary social media distribution to get new eyes on the juggernaut. Instead, you focus on Instagram. So tell me more about why. How did you make the decision? And what did you know about it already or not know about it?
Yeah, my biggest advice to founders who are trying to build a brand on social media, and not everyone is trying to, by the way, so this only applies if you care about this, is that the founder should truly be running their social media brand for the first 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something I would outsource to a branding agency. I wouldn't outsource it to anybody but yourself because your brand doesn't have a voice yet. And in the beginning, the brand is you. You know what the vision is of the company. You know what the voice is. You know whether you want to be snarky as a SaaS provider or whether you want to be serious as a consumer provider, right? Like you know what you want it to be. And you also want to be able to experiment really rapidly. Like if you have like a 3 a.m. thought, you want to write it down and execute it, right? And everyone
Mm-hmm.
knows once you add more people to the surface area, that surface area decision making just expands so much that nothing really gets done. You don't want that. So that's my advice is like the first 6 months as a founder, what I want every founder to commit to, if you can, is you're doing social media for the first 6 months alone. Alone. Like you can
Yeah.
ask people for advice, do that for sure. And maybe you can delegate out like creating templates, but you are doing it on your own. Like spend literally 15 to 20 minutes a day. That's all. And I want you to do it on your own. And the second thing, the reason why it should work is you should pick a channel that feels very authentic to you,
Mm-hmm.
even if might not be what you would expect for the business. And like my example that I talk about is, for example, you could be like an Uber like figure, like you're doing car services for professionals. You would normally think, oh, like, let me just do this on LinkedIn. That's where everybody is trying to solve this. Or you might think, let me do this on, I don't know, UGC. Like, let's get lots of influencers who are showing people how easy it is to drive a car. That might be hard for you to do if you're not naturally into recruiting influencers, if you're not naturally into managing hooks or things like that. So, guess what? Let's say you're a LinkedIn beast. You're really good at LinkedIn. We don't know why, but you're really good at LinkedIn. Go start posting on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Every day, post something interesting or funny or something that you think is in line with your brand on LinkedIn. And it could be from your personal post where you link people towards your brand, or it could be from your brand's page where you kind of explain your story. But I want you to do that every single day for 6 months. And the reason I want you to do that is by the end, you're going to figure out which messages are hitting. Are there any days when I post something and I'm getting a lot of organic traffic? Are
Mm-hmm.
there any days where I post something and I get a lot of organic traffic and I get people riding my car? Like look at that journey, really pay close attention and try to figure out what might be going on. Once you have that and you feel comfortable with the voices, then you can start delegating out. Then you can hire an amazing intern because they'll be way better than you and be like, hey, this is what I found out from like all my LinkedIn posts. Like, try to take this and keep running it for LinkedIn. Or you could find someone who's an expert at another field, like Twitter. You can find an intern who loves Twitter, be like, these are my findings from LinkedIn. Can you Twitterify it and like
Mm-hmm.
run our brand for Twitter? So that's my big advice, which is like it's very tempting to do all the channels at the same time, but you are going to be running yourself ragged and you won't be able to find your voice and you won't be able to find your audience. Everything, if you do everything at once, you're not going to find anything in terms
Yeah,
of.
and I mean this is the exact shift that I'm working on doing right now, and I already like a few days in feel like it makes so much more sense. Because then you can really double down on one platform rather than spreading yourself thin and just kind of dabbling in five different platforms. Okay, so why did you choose Instagram specifically? Like the New York Times was like blowing up on Twitter. Yeah, set the scene about the year and about where Instagram was versus where other news organizations were and how you picked it.
Yeah. So when I first started, I won't lie, like because I don't have a journalism professional background, I did learn journalism, I did study it, and I did go and write for my college papers and my high school papers, and I ran my high school papers. I had that experience, but I wasn't a professional journalist in the sense like I didn't work at the New York Times for a lot of years. So I did get a job offer for them to do business strategy, but like I didn't work in the journalism side. So
Yeah.
that meant you also have a lot of naivete, right? This is also true for so many founders. So I didn't know at the time when I was starting the Juggernaut that Twitter is the preferred place for journalists. Like I found that out as I was doing user interviews and talking to journalists because a lot of them were on Twitter. So I had to message them on Twitter. but I was using Twitter mostly as a recruiting tool. I wasn't using it as like a brand tool or a social outreach tool for my brand. Um, the reason I personally picked Instagram is because I was an ex-photographer. I used to do photography for the Yale Daily News and the Yale admissions office. I got to photograph some really cool people, from like Ludacris to other random people. And I knew photography really well. And everybody knows that the original platform for photographers was Instagram.
Hmm.
That's where you posted like, oh, look at my beautiful like photo reel, blah, 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 blah. To this day, there are still amazing photographers who thrive on Instagram. Obviously, Instagram has changed a lot, but that's what it used to be. So if you rewind, that was like the first modern day platform I really embraced wholeheartedly, naturally. I started posting much more regularly on 2014, even though I got a Twitter account earlier. Funnily enough, I got a Twitter account in 2010, and I was using it for Model UN. So I was, like a chair for a Model UN conference in at Yale, and I was using it as a secretary general of whatever, and I'd be tweeting out announcements to my thing. That's how I was using Twitter. And then for Instagram, I joined in 2014, but I like really embraced it and became like an avid everyday user. So when I started the Juggernaut, it was natural for me. Where is the place where I'm going to tinker and post my daily thoughts and be very visual? I also think that was really unique for the Juggernaut. I always had a vision. South Asian culture is so rich in imagery and color compared to many other cultures. Like there's a whole article we wrote about why the West is afraid of color, whereas like South
I
Asia
remember that.
isn't.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, I always had a vision that I wanted to be very visual. So Instagram is where I started because of all of those factors. My personal love for photography, my personal embrace of Instagram, and because I just felt like it would be a little bit different. And now I look around and everybody copies us. Like people copy our
Hmm.
news cards, people copy our article cards, people copy some of our real formats. I guess like, as they say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. We just have to keep going.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how I first heard about it. They stick in my mind. Even the one that you just mentioned about color, like they're so distinctive on the feed. I really, like, you have absolutely nailed the strategy. It's not just like the proof is in the pudding of like over 600K followers and 35 million what is that, views or people, like
Yeah, we reached
people you reach?
35 million, I think over 35 million impressions a month.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it really is just so high quality, unique, and memorable. Like every story being affiliated with not just one picture, but often multiple in a carousel makes it so much more memorable. And so, yeah, I love to get into the nitty gritty, hence the tactics part of tasting tactics. So, can you walk through some of those formats and like the creative that has performed really well that you continue to do to this day?
Yeah. And I think the one thing I will say about Instagram today, and this is what we were also talking about, is that it's changed so much, right? Everyone's talking about the TikTokification of Instagram. So what's really changed is how we view and consume the content, right? Like before, we'd see a lot of posts from the people we actually follow, and we would see it often in either similar to chronological order. Now, what's really interesting, and it also does impact your brand, is that you start seeing a lot of content from people you don't follow. A lot of it is reels, and some of them you look at the date, you're like, wait, this was posted like 4 months ago, but
Yep,
it went
yep.
viral. So they keep on pushing it even 4 months later. Now, how does that translate to a brand and a founder? I always say that the lessons that it teaches you is actually really much more easier to experiment today than ever before. Today, I tell you as a founder, even though we have such huge reach and followers, because it's no longer determined by just followers, sometimes we write a really good post that has lots of information, is really important, and it'll get like 300 likes.
Yep.
And then we'll do like, I was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this boat. So I cut this video about a boat, and that like went randomly viral. Like about this like historic boat that India created to sail to Oman. Nobody else was reporting on it. I was like, why are they not obsessed with this boat? And I'm obsessed with South Asian history. So I cut that video, posted it, and it went viral. And I keep seeing people sharing that video because obviously what Instagram algorithm is doing is it's still propagating that video because it already went viral. And that video is from the end of 2025.
Yep.
Sometimes I see birthday posts of like a Madhuri Dixit birthday post that we posted 2 years ago randomly go viral again because it's her birthday and so people are searching Madhuri. So I think the takeaway here is I don't get obsessed with the likes as much anymore. I will say use this time period to experiment, 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 and your hits will keep, it's like the 80-20 approach, right? Your hits will keep being hits and get you followers, and your losses won't get you followers, but hopefully they won't hurt you either because they're just going to stay in your feed and nobody's going to see them.
Yeah, yeah. They're not going to look like, I mean, I'm not sure about the algorithm exactly. Like, is it going to harm your average likes or something? Or is it just like more negligible because now they're really doing, like you said, the TikTok style algorithm,
Yeah,
and so is
it's
Twitter,
really,
and so are a lot of platforms.
yeah, I mean, it's a little bit better than TikTok in a sense because TikTok also embarrassingly shows you your like total likes, but like Instagram doesn't do that. Instagram doesn't even have that metric. So no, it doesn't even hurt your average in that sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, I do think the algorithm will harm you if you consistently have low engagement posts. But that's what I'm trying to say. You gotta experiment so that you keep kind of seeing the limits of what you can achieve. And so that's my only advice, which is do not follow any formula. Do not follow what you think is working for another brand. I must do this. You have to do your own thing. And you can look at any brand. Like I was just looking at, I hope they don't hate me that I've singled them out. I was looking at Gaurav Gupta's brand, and he posted like 2 or 3 videos about his new collection, which is about like sirens or like, about the ocean and whatever. One of the reels went super viral, and one of the reels has like 400 likes. That's
Oh yeah,
Gaurav
but
Gupta, right?
for context, like high-end fashion designer.
This is a
Yeah,
high-end
yeah.
fashion designer with over 1 million followers. So for over 400 more thousand followers than me. And one of his reels of the same content, right, has like 400 likes and the other one has gone viral.
Yeah.
That just shows you, that just proves exactly what I'm trying to tell you, which is like you don't know what's going to hit. So if you have great content, keep cutting it different ways. So if you have, for example, Shriya for this Taste and Tactics, you might try one excerpt from a video here and it doesn't hit, but maybe you will try another excerpt and it does really well. Maybe you cut it to a different music. Maybe you like add some like funny sound effects. Maybe you open with a crazy hook. Like this girl told me the craziest thing. Like who knows? Have fun with it.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I'm curious, like, what were a couple of formats that used to work and maybe don't now with the algorithm, or what are some formats that you're adding in more recently?
Yes. So one of the things that we started to really lean into, and I even hired a video editor in October for it, is because of the TikTokification of Instagram and because it's our major channel, ignoring everything else, I just was like, we need more video. And I tested it even before that by hiring a summer intern focused on video. It was our first ever summer intern who just did video. And her whole job was to experiment, experiment, experiment. We did everything from doing a full form interview on YouTube, doing lots of shorts on TikTok, to doing shorts on YouTube Shorts, to doing reels on Instagram. Like we did every single thing. So you can see I delegated to her because she knows what the Juggernaut brand is. She could immediately tell, oh, is this Juggernaut? I could say yes or no to any of her pitches because I was like, this is Juggernauty, this is not Juggernauty. And once she came in, we tested it. We had like one of her videos on YouTube went viral. It was our interview of Anurag Kashyap. So that gave me the confidence, that and other data points throughout the summer, that hey, we need a full-time video person. And and only then did I go full on in video. So now if you go to the Juggernaut, you'll notice that we'll try to do at least one video post a day now, whereas before we have had the biggest hits with mostly carousels. And so that's one change that we started doing.
How are the carousels doing now? Because that's really the thing that I think is like your signature in my mind. For context for people, it'll obviously be linked in the notes and you should absolutely click on and check it out. But there's like a beautiful, compelling image with their signature font and the title, and it's like very captivating. There's a very good hook, or kind of like the Taylor Swift engagement ring article. You're usually like talking about something that nobody is. So if there's like the show Never Have I Ever just dropped, or some other thing that's like well known in the South Asian diaspora, you'll find an angle that no one else is covering, like that I just didn't, me and my friends could not see anywhere else, and like the Juggernaut's the only place we see it. And then you can swipe through really easily and see quotes from the article, from the people you talk to, or from the people who it's about, and then also other images for context. And so you can get like such rich information and context just from the carousel. So how are those doing? How'd you come up with that?
Yeah. We came up with that format because like we were like, how do we tease information so people want to read it, but not give so much away that they think they've got the entire story.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've always gotten the balance right. Sometimes we actually have gotten feedback from people like, I don't subscribe because you give me everything for free. I'm like, oh my God, no, that's like not everything, I swear.
That
So
was true for a year for me when I just had less disposable
yeah.
income. I was like, I love these stories, but I
So we have
get
to
them
figure
now.
that balance out. I don't think we're perfect. I think that I have definitely noticed that sometimes like carousels, I've seen the most biggest spikes in hitting or missing along with the reels. I've just seen more spikiness in Instagram overall. But this goes down to like, don't over rely on what platform, right? One thing I will say is like, we consistently still have our own email list. And that email list will always be ours. So even if for some reason Instagram just shits the, you know what,
Yeah.
shits the bed and you're like, oh no, this platform is no longer working for us, you don't want to be caught dead without your own people, right? So also think about how underlying all of this advice I forgot to mention is we were growing our free newsletter along the
Hmm.
way.
Hmm.
And so that was really, really helpful because you don't ever want to be over rotating on one source of traffic. But I will say that because we've had such a strong social thing, I do think with all the chat GPT changes where a lot of people are like, oh, my SEO is down and whatever. The people who had the best SEO were the oldest companies, right? The New York Times, the Guardian,
Hmm.
etc. In
Hmm.
a weird way, social media sort of leveled some of the playing field because now social media posts show up on Google.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you have a news story, the chance, if even if you're a young brand, the chance of you showing up can be equally high if it's like a new topic that you are first on. So anyway, those are some things to think about in terms of how to assess like success and not be too obsessed if something doesn't work out. So yeah, we're still doing carousels. I try to not get upset if they don't do as well as I think they used to be doing, you know,
Hmm.
because I'm like, am I still showing up on SEO? Am I still directing people to links? Can I get to them in another way with a viral video? So
Hmm.
sometimes what we also do is we have an article, we'll then do a teaser video
Hmm.
to if they are not reading.
It's also like, because it's spikier now, you just want to make sure that there's still spikes consistently, but it's maybe on a weekly basis rather than like flat-ish for every post. It's going to be more like this, but just like, are we still having spikes or are we not even having spikes anymore?
Exactly.
And I think the newsletter piece is important because people always talk about the difference between a fully owned audience and a rented audience. And like you said, any social platform can make a huge change, shut your account down, something crazy can happen at any time. And then if you have no owned audience, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
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 So another thing you mentioned is that the second platform you expanded into was Twitter. And when did you feel like you had great momentum going with Instagram, decide to expand? How did you decide to either do that founder led again or not? So tell us a story about now the second platform.
Yeah, I think our biggest kind of derivative change happened during COVID when everybody was stuck at home. Everybody was on Instagram. Everybody was on Instagram lives, and everybody was on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to the network around you. At that time, I had an editor at The Juggernaut, and she was pretty big on Twitter. That's how I had recruited her. Going back to, I was using Twitter as a recruiting tool, and she was like, Snigdha, like the reason no one respects you is, or like no one knows about you is because you're not on Twitter. Like, what kind of journalist is not on Twitter? And I was like, for my mental health, like I'm not on Twitter. And she like challenged me. She's like, well, now you're at home because of COVID. I also got long COVID. So she's like, now you're at home. I'm sure you have an extra 30 minutes because you're not commuting to do Twitter. She was like so snarky and so I was like, fine. She's like, she literally was like, I want you to tweet, like, this might be like gross or whatever. She's like, I want to tweet, when you're waiting around in the bathroom, if you ever have your phone, I want you to tweet when you're like,
That's the best time.
heating.
Twitter's for the toilet.
Yeah. I want you to tweet when you're like heating food. Like, she made it sound so easy. She's like, whenever you have a moment, I want you to just tweet whatever's in your brain.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that personally. And then I started getting the hang of it. It's so weird. You have to learn a completely different skill for it. And you are so good at Twitter. So I started getting the hang of it. So on Twitter, I started getting followers. And not only were they any followers, I wasn't looking at the number. They were people I actually liked. So they would follow me, then I would follow them back. And I was like, wow, Twitter is such a great discoveries tool. I actually met some of my investors on Twitter during that time. I think I met you during that time on
It's
Twitter.
so good for tech. Like, I remember, similar to what you're saying, where she just was like, look at it in every moment. I realized how useful it would be for my career. And I told myself, I was like, I'm going to force myself to kind of be addicted to this. Like, I'm going to just like start looking at it all the time so that I like looking at it all the time and like follow anyone who sounds interesting. so that it's more compelling for me, because at the time I was really into Facebook groups and I was like, I'm just going to shift because this is going to be more valuable for tech. And it was kind of true. Like, it's not great. We're all like trying to get less addicted to social media, but I literally made a choice to get more addicted to social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I probably skipped this entire chapter where around this time, like we were also going really big on Clubhouse. So the Juggernaut was, we were doing our own South Asian room every weekend with Sonal Choksi of A16Z.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Also because of that, it's kind of like a nexus effect. So many of the people in our rooms were on Twitter. And I was, again, recruiting some of our speakers from Twitter that I was also spending more time on Twitter because Clubhouse was blowing up. So there was this like kind of interesting thing happening in this nexus of events during COVID because, you know, COVID really changed a lot of behaviors. That was a really big push into that. So once I started getting more comfortable, I then started tweeting from the brand account. And I would start tweeting like random shit all the time. Oh, like what's better, like gulab jamun or jalebi? Like, you know what I mean? Like I would like just stupid crap that I just wanted to like, cause I had like gotten the confidence from my personal account that I was just like tweeting on the Juggernaut. And then I think I grew that a little bit, maybe to 5,000, maybe to 10,000. I don't even remember. It wasn't that big. And I think I got the confidence again. I was like, okay, I love Twitter. I just don't have time. So then I found this amazing person on Twitter who was more Twittery than me. And I hired her to analyze our past Instagram posts and our past Twitter posts to come up with a Twitter strategy. And she was like, first of all, you're not tweeting enough. You need to tweet at least 6 times a day. And I was like, great, you do that. And so she did that. So, so that was kind of Twitter. And I think she grew it to over 10,000. And then from there, we've kind of like, I feel really bad to say that. We've not invested as much into it because I'm like, eh. So it's like now at like roughly 15,000, 15,200, and it kind of just stays there. We kind of like just there. One day maybe I will invest in it further, but that day has not come yet.
They had a lot of algorithm changes too. Every platform is evolving very, very rapidly. I know we're coming up on time and it's a bummer because I feel like we could talk for 4 times as long, but I want to make sure. I don't like those 2-hour podcast episodes. I look at them and I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to listen to this. So our final question I love to ask, and I think you kind of touched on it, but would love to hear a little more definitively. When has your personal taste gone against like prevailing wisdom? And how did you decide to either trust your intuition or kind of work with that prevailing wisdom?
Yeah, I think to be very perfectly honest, you never really know. But it never hurts to try. So for me, like choosing Instagram as a primary platform, that was totally like a winger based on what was easy for me at the time because everything else was so hard, right? I was like trying to raise money for the startup that nobody believed in at the time. I was trying to recruit for a startup where all the journalists said no to me. So all of that felt so hard. I was like, let me make one thing easy in my life. Let me make at least the social media strategy easy in my life because everything else was where I needed to spend more time on. And I think the thing is, the reality is you never really know, right? If after 3 months I stopped getting followers, maybe that would have been the sign from the gods and the platform like, hey, Instagram's not your platform. So I always tell founders, especially in the early days, because you haven't developed intuition yet with your company, to use a time block. So like tell yourself, I'm going to try this for 3 months, or I'm going to try this for 6 months, or I'm going to try this for a year. And then give it up if it's not working. So like after 3 months or 6 months, if my Instagram followers were like stuck at like 20 or 30, I would have been like, nah, I gotta move on. Maybe I should go to Twitter. So I think that's my advice, I would say, is like, try to make your life easy when everything else feels hard, or at least one thing easy. And for me, that was social media. And then that was my taste. My taste was visual. My taste was color. I had a little bit of a background with, you know, design and photography. And I leaned into it. It's also my unfair advantage. Like other people can copy me. There are some accounts who have been copying me. Like, I will not even name them.
Always.
And I look at it and I'm like, well, you don't have our font. You don't understand why I balanced that position this way instead of that way. You're using a gradient, but you don't understand how to actually change the colors of the gradient. You know, there's so many interesting things.
Yeah, they have the sauce. Yeah,
they don't have the underlying taste, like you said. So let people copy. They're not going to have the taste that you bring. Use your unfair advantages and like multiply them. I always say that. Whatever is your unfair advantage, multiply it and make it happen, because if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, you'll find out really soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Snigdha, for joining us. So much knowledge drops in this, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And I'll obviously link to The Juggernaut. Everyone should check it out. Check out their Instagram.
Check out our Instagram and subscribe if you want to
Subscribe.
support media
It's
companies and communities like this, because we need everyone to support. You don't have to be South Asian to subscribe.
it's so good.
We need more narratives, right? Not just the same old ones.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Really, really high quality stories. So thank you again for joining.
Thanks so much, Shriya. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
I loved this episode with Snigdha, and it was so much fun to learn some of the story behind the Juggernaut, why she started it, and some of the crazy tales like how they got into YC. But the thing that really stood out to me was all of her amazing social media tactics and tips. So here are some of my top 3 takeaways from the episode that I'm applying right now myself, and I definitely recommend that all the listeners do too. So the first thing was when she said that social media should be founder-led for the first 6 months. I think like a lot of things in your startup, it's really important to have everything like speak through your core brand voice and mission and vision, which means that as a founder, you have to do all of the things and wear all the hats. And so I thought that was really crucial. But of course, she did eventually like farm things out to other creators and other contractors and consultants. But just at the beginning, like understanding what resonates is just important for you to do that as a founder because you have the vision. The second thing that I thought was really valuable was not being locked into whatever social platform is like most common for your industry. And if you are very well versed in a different platform, it'll be more sustainable to post things there frequently and to engage frequently, but also you could stand out. It could be really interesting and different, and be less like typical. And so I thought that was a really cool idea, like starting on Instagram rather than Twitter, even though she was running like a news and journalism and media company, I thought was brilliant. And like I said, I have seen it over the years, over and over. Like it really stands out in my mind as one of the most interesting and best Instagrams that I know of. And the last thing was a lot of social media platforms have changed their algorithms to favor viral content, things that accrue a lot of views and likes right at the beginning, and then they keep showing them to people for months or years. And so I thought that was really interesting when she was talking about how your content's going to be more spiky. You're not going to have like relatively consistent engagement because your followers are seeing it. Rather, a lot of new people and people who are not following you yet are seeing your content, which is great. The ones that are already popular, maybe with your followers or the first few people, 1,000 people who see it. But that also means you have the freedom to experiment because it kind of doesn't really matter or harm you if you post some like weird random stuff and ideas that get no engagement. You're like, okay, I'm just going to move on. And even the huge accounts have flops like that. So this was such a useful episode, and thanks again to Snigdha for joining. Loved learning all of this stuff from her. Taste and Tactics is available on every major podcast platform and at Taste and Tactics on LinkedIn, X, TikTok, and Instagram. Thank you to our producer Simran Honda. See you next week.